Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Soul Rising podcast. I am your host, Amanda McCoy Flanagan. I am so grateful that you are back here with me for another amazing episode. If you are new to the community, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. The more the merrier. You make this show happen. Without you, there is absolutely no reason to do this. So I'm grateful for you. Thank you for being here. I always have amazing guests, and I don't know, Casey and I crossed paths somewhere on Instagram. I don't know how the connection actually happened, but I really liked her vibe, and I asked her to be on the show, and she has some really great stuff to share with you today, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to start our conversation. So Casey Stevens is a spiritual psychotherapist, which I love, bringing spirit into everything, who approaches her practice by bridging the worlds of science and spirituality. People desire to experience love, inner peace, and to live a healthy, prosperous, joyful life, right? That's the goal. So Casey guides clients on a pathway to optimizing their unique human potential through healing self-awareness, patterns of human behavior, and consciousness. Through her holistic and clinical multidimensional approach, she helps clients cultivate a deep connection with their sacred inner wisdom so they may lead an awakened, meaningful life. Yeah, isn't that what we all want? There's such an awakening happening right now. It's amazing. So Casey, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So tell me, so what kind of inspired this work you're doing? And, and I know that your brand is Shrink Bigger. Can you tell us a little bit about what that oxymoron means?
Yeah, thanks. It's a bit of a play on words, a double entendre that really kind of dropped in. Obviously, I'm trained in psychology and practice as a therapist, but this idea that I've always kind of sensed or carried with me that there is a limitation in that framework if we just kind of follow it in the Western traditional sense of things clinically. There is limitation. It doesn't always incorporate the spirit, the spiritual self, the soul, consciousness. So for me, it's such a wonderful foundation and framework to reference and come in. There's so much value in it. And I always sensed that there was a bit of a limitation. And so I guess Shrink Bigger is, integrating the play on words there to incorporate that we are held in a space with somebody who has that clinical training, but it can be much more expansive than just limiting somebody to those traditional diagnoses or labels or frameworks that, in my mind, I think sometimes can be a little bit more limiting than expansive. And so the idea of this work is that we can expand people into their consciousness. It's just like radical responsibility. My work is really about this radical responsibility and the way that we can do healing when we really look at it that way, rather than getting locked into our stories or our victimhood or any of those things. It can be so much more expansive, and we really are the powerful ones in our life. And so that's the idea, is that we can expand people into that biggest, brightest version of themselves, the most empowered version of themselves. So
I love it. It totally aligns with the work I do. I call myself a loss and empowerment coach. And yeah, I was a grief coach. And then I was like, you know what? That's kind of limiting, right? That's kind of like, I think when people hear grief, they think of death. And I do way more. And loss happens across the board. Like every day, we have these little losses and we don't really recognize them as loss. Right. But yeah, I love what you're talking about, because, we've been saying body, mind, spirit, body, mind, soul, like forever, right? In the holistic space. And in the holistic space, which is why I like you blend holistic psychology, right? You blend them both. But it has not crossed over into that psychological space. And I actually feel like you're a front runner. I'm a front runner, because the coaching that I do the whole thing too. I talk, I do energy work, I breathe, I meditate, I regulate the nervous system. I help people do that kind of stuff. I do Reiki. So like, kind of for coaching with me, we don't just sit here, talk, and make goals and I hold you accountable. Like, that's great. That's part of it. But you can get on the Reiki table and move energy and move things through, because we are spirit. So thank you so much for blending the science and the spirit. I don't think it has to be one or the other. And I love that radical responsibility.
Yeah. Beautiful. Love the work you're doing too. It's no wonder we're connected.
Yeah. Very similar. So the radical responsibility, let's talk about that a little bit. Because I say that too. I feel like we have a duty and an I don't use those words. I've never heard those words put together. I love that. But I also feel like we have some kind of duty and an obligation to ascend or awaken or witness our soul's growth, and our behaviors that either are hindering or helping us to progress in this thing called life, um, for the planet. I don't know. I feel like there's a collective thing going on here. What do you?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I really think it is what the soul, this eternal part of us, comes here to do. And it's this obligation. I love even that word. Like, we can ignore the calling, but I really think that the soul comes here to evolve. And then it's our job to get on board with it as our human selves in this life. Do we get on board with what the calling is, the objective, and then how to align ourselves with where the soul wants to go in this life and what it wants us to learn? And do we step forward into that calling, or do we not? And if we don't, then I think we just have a lot more suffering, and we'll probably be repeating some of the same lessons over and over again, certainly in this lifetime, but beyond that as well. And so really to answer that calling, that radical responsibility, but also the obligation to our soul, the eternal part of us that carries on and really, I think, is the most valuable part of who we are, then how do we honor that mission, and how do we amplify our own soul's experience and journey in that? But I really believe that that's the best activism we can do in the world. That's how we really make a difference if we do this work deeply in the way that we're discussing.
100%. So I have a master's in social work, and I actually have never used it. I've never actually gone into the social work profession. I graduated and I decided to raise my kids and stay home. And then I wrote a book, and everything else has kind of ensued from there. But the switch happened, like what kind of inspired the book was, because I was thinking during COVID, when I get out of this house, I'm going to use that degree. I'm going to go do something. And I wanted to work with legislature because nothing changes unless the law changes. However, I had a whole awakening during COVID. It was wild. And I had this awareness that we can make all the laws we want. We can try and force people to behave and to change and to live, what we think is the way we should be living. And yet, if we're still not healed inside, that energy is pervasive. And if we're afraid of each other because we're not met ourselves, or to trust ourselves so that we can be in connection with others, right? That's going to take us down faster. It's the energy. It's really the energy. And I love that these conversations are happening because it's hitting mainstream now. So how can people hear that call you're talking about, that our soul wants to evolve and wants to awaken? What might it feel like for people to be like, is that what's happening to me?
Yeah, great question. I don't know in your experience, but in my experience, I think it usually entails some observation, witnessing of your own suffering. And so it's looking at the places where you are not free, where there is some suffering and struggling that is undue. It's really like we could be having a different experience if we just got on board with ourselves. So whatever arena of your life that might be showing up, are you suffering? Is it not optimized? Do you feel totally at peace and happy and in kind of your pleasure mode around life? Or is there really some suffering that's going on? And if there's suffering in any arena of your life, and sometimes it, is pervasive to many arenas, if we're really not on board, then it's really deciding, do I want to follow this devotional path to my soul's evolution and figure out how to do it differently? And so do I need to find some guidance for that? Typically we do. We can't solve problems from the limited consciousness that we come from. And so we usually need somebody who's expanded that already for themselves and can help to challenge us and let us see where we are limited, where we are constrained, where we have limiting beliefs about things. And then can we really lean into that and really be held? And of course, that takes a safe container to do so. But the first indication, I think, is suffering. And sometimes we have to really be in deep suffering before we listen to that call. We'll just keep doing things the same way. We're all habituated, individuals. And that is just how the nervous system and the brain works until we decide consciously to disrupt those patterns. And so we can do that. It's available to anyone about any topic that there could, possibly be any area of struggle or suffering. You can find liberation and freedom around that if you choose to do it. And so if you see that you're suffering, do you choose to have a more enlightened, free path forward? And then how do you find the people to support you, or who will encourage you even in your own life that are already there? So that really is, I think, the greatest indication is just like, yeah, am I really happy? Am I really living my fullest potential here? Or am I aware that I'm not? And if I'm not, then what would I do about it?
Yes. Make a decision. That's the word that jumped out. Decision to be devoted, devotional, intentional. Like, I'm making this decision, and then I have to take action, right? I have to find the right people. I have to find the professionals that can help me. I have to tap in. I have to maybe learn how to sit quietly for 5, 10, 15 minutes to allow something else to drop in. And I think you're 100% on the mark with the suffering. Like, I don't think life has to be all suffering, right? It's all spectrum. We're supposed to have, ideally, I think, more joy than we actually have suffering. But suffering is the catalyst. Why would we change? Why would anybody choose to do any kind of heavy lifting on looking under rocks, things that might expose things that might give us anxiety, or these limiting beliefs that we've made work for us? We haven't, they're actually causing a problem, but they're protecting us somehow, right? So why would we do that unless there's some kind of pain? I'm in recovery. Tell us about recovery. And there's a phrase, when the pain gets great enough, when the pain is great enough that I just cannot stay the way that I am anymore. And like, I'm sure you've seen clients or people come to you and they say, and I pushed it down and I pushed it down and I did this and I did that and I tried this and I tried that. And you just can't, I say you can't outrun your shadow. You just can't outrun it for too long, going to catch up.
That's right. It always will. Yeah. So it's really, I love the word decision because it's that. It's like, can I take ownership? Can I acknowledge, whatever we deny or defend, we cannot change. And so can I acknowledge that there is some degree of suffering? One of the biggest steps we can take is just deciding that we're going to do it differently. And if you decide, then I also believe when you decide to become the student, the teacher will appear. So we start to magnetize people and situations and the right circumstances as soon as we really decide to do it. And, the rest can kind of unfold in that way. And as long as we stay devoted and committed to that path, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah. And it's going to get hard, for people listening. If this is a journey that you're already on, or something that you're seeking or thinking about, working with a professional like Casey or whoever else, it's gonna get hard, and you're gonna want to stop, and you're gonna say, why am I doing this? And then it's those reminders. It's like your why. I also am a writing coach. Why are you writing this book? Or why are you doing anything in life? And you have to just continually remind yourself, because things might get marginally better, right? And then it might be like, oh, maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe I really don't have to go there. So making that decision day after day that you're going to keep seeking and searching and doing what you have to do until you know that you don't have to so much anymore. I mean, there's always more. There's always layers, right? And then a new experience happens, life happens, and then you see more and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, like you get triggered. I mean, I'm in that stage right now. I've been working on myself for like 2 decades, and I'm back in therapy. I'm doing EMDR now because something happened that totally triggered an abandonment wound. And I'm like, wow. Right? Like, I feel like it's like, I was using the example, what was the metaphor that I was using the other day? It was really good. I forget now because I'm in perimenopause and I have no memory, but it was almost like crumbs, almost like I got like the big pieces of a lot, and there's just like these little things that are still hanging on that I just want to be free of. And when you're on this journey, you just want more. When it's real, I feel like we just want more and more and more and more freedom.
Yeah, that's right.
It never ends. So what is your multidimensional approach? Like, if somebody wants to work with you, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, it's so psycho-individual for every single person. There is no one size fits all. It really is meeting with an individual and then seeing where they are. And to me, I can work with anyone about any topic. It doesn't really matter what it is, but is your orientation really kind of self-focused, meaning we're not externally organizing, and we're learning to turn that orientation inward, which is, again, the radical responsibility and acceptance of what is, so that we can take full accountability and then move outward. And so some people, before they can even start doing work, they need to do nervous system regulation. When healing doesn't work, usually what the reason is that somebody's at a baseline nervous system doesn't have the capacity to expand or tolerate or even perceive the information. And so there's really kind of this very psycho-individual assessment that what's going on with anyone at a baseline. There could be, just then an evaluation that somebody with a keen eye has to come in and help. Even, at a baseline, like, are we doing the thing biologically to balance ourselves? Are you getting the things that you need? And so evaluating someone for that, like, what can they tolerate? Where can they enter? How deep can they go? How fast can they go there, right? We can go as deep as you want, but we also have to make sure that somebody's nervous system can tolerate the expansion. And so there's a lot of that going on. But then it could be a multitude of anything, right? It could be psychoeducation. It could be consciousness. It could be really kind of doing some deep challenge and support work where you're really understanding what's going on and where you're blind and you don't fully see yourself. Obviously, we're both trained in understanding behaviors and patterns and human behavior and all of those things. And so sometimes there is just some kind of sharing your story. And then usually in my work, that would be challenging. I always call it tracking the energy when I'm doing energy work. I'm just, really intuitive myself. And I think when you have a nervous system that's really regulated, we all have that available to us, but we're not a clear enough channel to be able to perceive the world accurately. So much of our intuition ends up being nervous system. But for me, it comes through very kinesthetically. For me, it comes through very, like, I'll get an imprint of what's going on in my body actually for people. And so it ends up being that I do a lot of this nervous system release stuff where I end up, if I'm sitting with somebody and we're tracking the energy, meaning we can just follow whatever's most present with you, where it is in your body, where it is in your history, where it is in your timeline. And I'll get an impression of that in my own body of you. And so that's what a lot of my energy work ends up looking like. And then I'll start doing really weird things. I'm burping, I'm yawning, I'm getting hiccups. I'll have all of these very physiological things that are happening that are nervous system regulators that are telling me, hey, we're on the right path. I'm clearing your system, your field for you, because I'm experiencing this in my body. So it's just confirmation that that's the work that we're doing. So I know it sounds weird, but that's kind of how it comes through for me. And then we just track the energy and we just go wherever we need to go. And sometimes that can be fast and sometimes it's slow. And sometimes people have a perception of that themselves and sometimes they don't. And so it's really then me highlighting and guiding them so that they can have the experience, because I'm not healing you, you're healing yourself. And so that's what it ends up looking like for me. Again, it comes through in that way, but then it will develop in all kinds of, it will drop in different ways. So I can have enough information that I can guide somebody about their own journey and their own story, where their own blockages might be. And so that can be some of the work too. And it's just, it all depends on what people need. And every session, I don't come prepared whatsoever. I don't follow an agenda of like, okay, well, here's the steps and we did this last time. And so I might check in about that. But really, I think every time we're showing up with somebody, we're bringing something new and fresh, and our energy signature is relaying something that needs to happen in that moment. And so sometimes that's a continuation of what we've already been doing. Sometimes it's totally new because something new has emerged. And so I like to just really show up organically with people and see what wants to be revealed without any agenda or without any plan, so that we can really give them exactly what they need. And I've never had it not work. So that's a really, in my mind, a great way of meeting people exactly where they are so we can best help them. So it kind of looks like a combination. I mean, it might be subconscious work. It might be inner child work. It's the gamut, right? It's like we have to know how to do all of these things and have different, I don't follow any one modality from, our clinical training. Usually the linear modalities are the least appealing to me. It's really the ones that are more intuitive that are utilized in my practice. But at this point, after practicing for 15 years or so, it's just kind of intuitive. It's like you kind of get the Tootsie Roll of everything, and whatever is needed is what ends up coming through. And there's not one, it's not like I'm relying on any one modality or one training to do anything. They're all there in the background. And then I think bringing my own magic and medicine to that, I think is really when people resonate the most with the work, when I just bring through my truest self and my clear vessel. If I bring that, then that helps people heal more. So I don't know. What about you?
I totally love that. That's exactly how I feel like it should happen, because people are drawn to you or drawn to me or drawn to whoever they're working with because of an energy. And there's something that you're carrying that they trust can help them. And I think when you can really trust your practitioner to just kind of get you, know you, understand what's going on that energetic level and not so cerebral, it just feels more authentic. The connection feels so much truer, and it just gets in there to the core. I cringe when I hear like a mindset coach or, just that. There's some women in my local Castle Rock community here who are coaches who I noticed recently are integrating energy work. And it's taken them some time to get comfortable with that, because there is still like a weird stigma. Like you said, oh, that might sound weird. I'm a psychic medium. So that does not sound weird to me at all, because that's how I get information or evidence, as we have to provide that we're with your person, is I get it in my body. I get a knowing, and then I'll feel like their personality, or if I ask, how did you pass? I'll get a stomach ache, or I'll get something in my head. I mean, not every single time, but like it's in these body sensations and the awareness, which is where we're all being led in this great awakening happening. It's no longer here. This is part of it. Don't get me wrong. It's totally part of it, which is why you still do the psychology part, right? Part of it. But it's really internal. We're being awakened to, and I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, but it's Christ consciousness. Well, what's going on is, when I'm doing work with my mentor with this, is an upgrading of our DNA and a recalibration. You're nodding your head, so you know this, and a recalibration of the spinal column, of the spinal cord, to actually function as we always were meant to, with the spinal fluid moving from the tailbone up to the third eye, to awaken the intuition. Like you're saying, we all have it, but some people are just jammed up, or they don't believe. We've been so conditioned to go just right to here to figure it out, to pull up those bootstraps and you figure it out, instead of going to this higher consciousness. Like you said, it's part of your human behavior and consciousness, higher consciousness that has your answers. You have your answers. And I love that you said that. I love that you said, I'm not doing it for you. You're healing yourself. We're just like little guides. We ask the right questions. We kind of probe a little, and we hopefully bring our clients to a place where they're doing it for themselves. And that is so much more empowering and has so much more staying power than being told, okay, go home and do this and do that and do this. It's not personal enough. When you're feeling things intuitively, on an instinctual, bodily level, there's no denying it. And it becomes real. So yeah, I do similarly to what you do. I actually do always have a little bit of a plan. I write my own meditation. I check in with my clients the day before and I say, where are you at? Like, what's going on for you? So that I can start tapping in before the session, and I'll maybe kind of plan. But usually it never goes. It's not like, oh, okay, wait, no. We have to get to number 2 on my list. No. It's just like a guidepost for me to start somewhere, and then we go wherever you take it, right? That's the beauty of this kind of work. We don't have agenda. We meet you where you're at, and then we try to just enhance and bring you up and raise this consciousness, like you're saying. It's very interesting
I love
stuff.
it. Yeah. Beautiful work you're doing. I love it. Yeah. And it is. I mean, that's the way you describe, I mean, your work is so incredibly multidimensional too. It's like, just to be able to pull from so many different places and give somebody what they need, and to be grounded in those different approaches so that they can be really valuable. It's like, what do you need? I'm not just bringing this limited, schema of information forward, but we can go anywhere you need to go, like to get where you need to go. We can do it. We can pull it out. So let's do it.
Yeah. And if they show up and their nervous system is all jacked up and we can calm it somewhat. We could tap, we could breathe, we could grab, we could do all the things, right? To maybe get you from an 8 to a 4. But if you're still like in that zone, then we just keep it super simple. We just ground, we get present, we breathe. Maybe we make a list. Maybe you go home and write a gratitude. Like there's all different levels of where you're at. So like, I don't want people to feel like pressured if they see me, they have to be like this, like, great awakening. No, we go where you're at and we take baby steps depending on what you want. Maybe you don't want all that. You want something different from me. It's like not going on our own, what we think. That I feel like is such a really cool, like, freedom is when, as a practitioner, you don't feel like you have to figure it out for the client. It's just being there. Sometimes they just want me to listen, and that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us. So what else? So what else do you have going on? What's like on your heart lately? Like, are you reading any interesting books? Is there anything like submodality? Like I was just talking about, like the spinal cord fluid and Christ consciousness. Is there anything that like you're going into on like a next level?
It's so interesting even that you say that you've had this activation yourself and you're doing some more of your own. I mean, it's like that always happens. We can be doing the work for decades and there are things that emerge and we just get to meet deeper and deeper parts of ourselves and peel back those layers. And so I find myself kind of similar in a way that just certain things are activated and it's like, okay, here's the layer that needs to be peeled back now. And I need to look at this. And by the way, I need a container for that. It's really exciting just to feel like you get to keep going and be so open and vulnerable and honest about that, I think is really inspiring to people because when we are expanding, when we choose this path, when we align with our soul on that, on this evolution, right, and growth, it really never ends. And we have to keep training our nervous system to take on more capacity because inherently, it doesn't mean that you're even at a baseline dysregulated, but it can show up after years or things, situation, people, whatever the circumstances might be, that are just invitations and opportunities for us to expand. And our nervous system can't tolerate it at every level. And so we literally have to learn how to be expanders in that way. And so that's something I think that I am personally noticing. For me, a lot of it comes up in relationship because of, I was married before and went through a divorce and there's all kinds of loss, as you say. And then loss, death. My former first husband went through all of that. And for many, many years, of course, I had relationships here and there, but largely I didn't and was really kind of on my growth path, right? So getting remarried and being in partnership again, it's like all kinds of, and, it's been years in the making, but then as the relationship evolves, that comes up. So for me personally, I've noticed that it's like, okay, I have to really reorient my nervous system to the ways that this can show up for me and how I can hold more expansion because I've certainly carried a history and traumas and worked, individually and even in other partnership to kind of expand that. But it's like, okay, this is a whole nother ball game, right? To do this at this level. And so I'm just having to sit with that as it evolves, even several years in. It's like, okay, I'm really looking at that myself now and just how do I hold this? It's one thing to do it on your own, but really, how do we do this relationally with others? That co-creation that's happening. And, there's just opportunity in all of it. And how do you lean into that so that you can really be expanded in that experience too? That's the thing that I'm interested in going back and just, getting to know myself and healing some of these parts that feels really exciting to get to do because it is this opportunity. And it's like, oh, I help people do this. And I am having the same struggle myself, right? Like we're all just humans doing this. And so how do we lean into that and really show up? And for me, so much of my wounding has been in the relational framework. And so therefore, so much of my healing is in the relational framework. So, yeah.
There's a line in the step book, in the 12-step book, step 6 or 7, but that our basic problem is we don't know how to be in right relationship with people. and life could be great and I could live in a bubble all to myself, but that's not fulfilling, right? Relationship, partnership is the seed of joy. It's just where we get joy and connection, right? It's all about connection, but they pull out the parts of us that we'd rather not see. That's the whole point of it. That's why I believe we're drawn into partnerships, is to show us those woundings, right? Those parts of us. Because nobody ever as a mirror there or telling me things saying, hey, this is not cool, whatever, then I would just kind of be floating through life. And yeah, I guess you could probably make a case for that being ideal, but really, how much are we really living if we're just protecting? It feels like self-protection. If I'm just, I'm good, I'm on my own, I'm independent, I'm self-sufficient, I don't need anybody. Right. I'm not sure I'm buying that. Yeah. So I applaud you for continuing to go. Yeah. And I think letting our clients know, like, of course it's about them. The session is about them. It's not about us. But like, I become like friends with these women. They're sharing such intimate details and we're together for months, so I'll let them know, like, yeah, I'm going through something myself. Just to maybe not details, but just like to keep it human, like human to human. And so that we won't have them on this major pedestal and we can meet each other here, right? And just be human together and be with people instead of us talking to them. Right? We're actually with them. And I think that's half the reason why a lot of people seek the work that I do is they're looking for a connection. They're looking for community. Like you were talking about containers. That's why I do retreats. I think half the reason people show up to my workshops, events, retreats is they're seeking community. That's half of why they're there. It's very important.
Yeah. And I think to that point too, since we both kind of come from this clinical framework, is, there is a way that the structure of that is set up in such a way that it's almost like there's an authority or there is a superior here, and therefore how would you be inferior? And I think people can just relate when they feel on the same level as you. And so, yes, their session is about them, of course. And you are an authority because you've healed these things and you have expertise and whatnot. But I think it's dissolving that level of the ego too, that it's like, I'm any better than anyone else who's struggling. It's like, no, that's why the orientation and the clientele, you can be a beginner and you can be really advanced and everyone can work with me as long as your orientation is like high investment. And like, hey, I really want to take this radical responsibility and I really understand what the assignment. And if I'm a beginner in that versus being advanced, it really doesn't matter because I've been all of those things, right? And so I think people can really feel that when you're not coming to them with this superiority or this ego, but they can sense that we can hold space for all of those things, and that makes them soften and relinquish whatever aspects of themselves might be resistant to the healing in the first place. That's another real benefit of like, yeah, how do we show up is we're just humans. And yeah, I've been there. I've been through exactly what you're going. Hey, I went through it yesterday, by the way. And so I really helps people feel like they can relate and understand, and we're not one-upping them in any way.
Exactly. And in this particular, whatever we're talking about, whatever we're doing, I just happen to be a little bit further along on the journey, and that I can pass that along to you. And it's kind of, everything actually goes back to my recovery program. It's so cool. If anybody's out there and is like, I might need to get sober, just go to 12-step recovery, because it is like spiritual principles, but it's just like a baseline for living. We call it design for living. And I take a lot of those principles into my work. So it's not that I'm better than you. I've just been here a little bit longer and I have a little bit more experience with it. Just like I go to other people, mentors, therapists, who have a little bit more experience than me. That's just how this whole thing works. And I just love that. It's kind of like it takes a village. Like we all kind of do this together and are helping each other grow. And then there's women that I work with that are nutritionists and know more about, inflammation than me. And I can go to them for that. It's really beautiful to watch what's going on. I always say it's a very painful time to be alive, but it's also an extremely exciting time to be alive, that we're like these little cogs in the wheel of this massive shift and change that's occurring, and it's happening from this feeling inside of like, okay, yeah, I think it would be time. And then the more and more people that are talking about this stuff, podcasts are awesome. social media I have a love-hate relationship with, but like the more people that are out there speaking their truth and are like, oh no, that happened to me. Oh no, I had that experience. Like we normalize it. And then other people feel safer to talk about their own
Yeah,
experiences.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Just normalizing it, I think, really is so healing in so many ways. So
Yeah. That's awesome. It's awesome. Okay. Do you have any, like, I always ask my guests towards the end, if you have any like tidbit, nugget of wisdom, any little thing that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
yeah, I think maybe what comes through today is just asking yourself that, like, what is your orientation to any of your problems? Are you looking outward? Are you blaming? Are you feeling like a victim? Is that orientation one that is focused on extrinsically focused? And if it is, then you will stay in suffering. And so, really questioning and challenging that orientation. And the only way that we can really fully choose to heal and free ourselves from some of the problems that we're having is really shifting that orientation to an internal one where we can take ownership, where we can see ourselves clearly, where we can see where we're limited, where we're willing to receive that feedback or be challenged in what our beliefs or our understanding of ourselves are, where we're shifting from a perception to a perspective. And so the only way to have that happen is by really examining what's the direction of that orientation. And so if you find that it's outwardly, meaning, they did this to me, or, oh, but whatever it is that it's outward facing, where you're blaming your problems on someone else or circumstances or people, situations, any of that, then you're really going to stay in your own suffering. And so to what end would you like to really shift and change that so that you can have full ownership of your own life? And therefore, you can change the direction of the course of your life in any arena that you should decide to do so. So I think that's a great question to ask. And then knowing, okay, well, if I'm not very good at that, then what resources would I find? What people, what containers, what circles would I be in order to expand that and get even better at it? Because the awareness is always the first step, but then there's the work to dismantle all of the ways that that's getting in your way. So perhaps that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you reminded me, I wanted to bring up, you said something before, you used the phrase external organizing. Can you tell everybody what does that mean so that they can notice if this is what they're doing in their own life?
Yeah. So an external orientation really essentially means that you're looking outward and you're blaming people and circumstances for what's happening in your life. And so that orientation means that I might get into a conflict with somebody and I'm blaming them. I'm blaming the circumstances of the world, the politics, the culture. There's some way in which I am outwardly looking and blaming, shaming, pointing my finger, or feeling victimized by those circumstances in some way. So it's like, well, I couldn't do this. I couldn't be any better. This is what they did to me. Or there's just some way that our orientation, the organization, and the way that we're looking, our entire perception of the world is based on, well, I'm just, reactive. I'm just responding right to what's happening outside of me. And so that orientation won't ever allow us to look inward and take radical responsibility. It's not really saying, okay, well, no matter what happened, no matter how somebody treated me or what the circumstances or what the dynamic is that's going on externally, I still can stay on course. I can be on my path. I can do my best. I can see what the opportunity is here and I can improve it. That orientation really keeps us in our power. Otherwise, we stay in like a victim consciousness about everything. And we're always feeling like, well, I had no other choice. Empowerment really is understanding that you always have a choice. And I may not be able to control everything around me, but I can control myself and I can decide who I want to be in any circumstance. And if I do that, then I'm really walking through life with an orientation of that's kind of goes inward first and then decides how to consciously relate, hopefully taking the conscious right action to consciously relate. Circling back to even the beginning of the conversation where you were talking about wanting to change the laws and all of these things. And I really think if we were all to do this, we don't need to be governed by any religious organization or any government or any laws or we get to be organized around conscious rules that we're all operating by. And what a different world it would be if we were doing that consciously, of course, right? It's not just like, hey, you're free to do whatever you want, but is this organization one that takes radical responsibility for our own consciousness and how to do that in a conscious way? And then we don't need those constructs because they're just limiting, by the way. It's like everyone can have a different opinion about everything that's happened in the world and COVID and politics, and we can all have a different opinion, but like, where does that source from truly? And usually people are getting an external sense of that rather than coming from an internal, truly a conscious internal guidepost of what would be conscious and what would be good in the highest good of all, not just the highest good of me, but the highest good of all. And so how do we operate in a way that we are considering that, where there is a multidimensional kind of intelligence, where there is a emotional intelligence that's coming from that, where I can hold kind of from this metacognition around my own self, but also I can consider others. Truly, I can consider them and their best. But we have to go inward first in order to do that, because if we keep our orientation outwardly focused, then we'll never get there. We will just absolutely never get there. When we rely on these structures that are coming from other places, we'll never get there. We'll always be dependent rather than free. And so that's really where we want to get, is to this place where we can run that through our filter of consciousness that's not imbued with any other wounding or perspectives or limitations or traumas or other people's belief programs that we've absorbed, but rather we can really identify what that truly would be for ourselves in a way that can then care for most people. Any soul on the earth is capable of doing that. We're all capable, and that's what the soul wants to do. It doesn't want to do things that aren't helpful or beneficial or kind or any of those things. The soul wants to do that, and so are we following the soul's path to become that version of ourselves. So you can find me on all the social media platforms at Shrink Bigger, or my name is Casey Stevens, so you can look that up and find me lots of places too. And then, yeah, if people resonate, then you can always find a spot on my calendar and see if it resonates. You can listen to lots of podcasts that I've been on, like places like wonderful places like these, that you can get a taste and flavor of what that work might sound and look like. And then a really accessible offering that I've just been called to do for a long time and recently opened up is doing this consciousness collective. So it's like a monthly gathering. It's a really low investment. That's a lot more accessible for people who may just be wanting to continue the work, maybe new to the work, or may not be ready to dive fully in yet. It's a place to come and meet. So there's links for all of those things that people can go and find. And I like just kind of getting the word out there and giving people access to this way of working and being in the world. And like you said, yeah, I always like to say, set the energy, don't match the energy, set the energy. And so how do you really set the energy that you want to experience in the world? And yeah, I'd love to connect with anyone who this resonates with. And sounds like you're a really worthy place that people can find too. So I'm glad to connect my audience to you as well.